In the latest episode of people trying to close the Department of Education and me sitting in front of a backdrop that deeply pisses off a large group of people, let's get into the bill that was introduced last week. On November 21st, Senator Mike Rounds introduced a bill, and his big idea is to rip the Department of Education into shreds and give states block grants for education. A block grant is basically a big pile of money that's given to the states by the federal government with just a couple rules on how they can use it. The Education Department would close within 6 months if this bill becomes a law. Rounds would like to split up the department's programs. So examples of that, the Department of Health and Human Services would take on all of special education, everything that falls under IDEA. The Department of the Treasury would handle federal student loan and grant programs, including Pell Grants. The Department of the Interior would handle all Native American education programs, and the Department of Labor would take over career, technical, and adult education. Oh, and the Department of Justice would take over enforcing laws that protect students from discrimination, like Title IX. We've been talking about how and why and where states choose to spend their money. Critical programs like special education, school meals, and support for low-income students would be completely ignored if states decide to just put the money elsewhere. The federal safeguards that ensure this funding helps kids who need it most would be gone with this bill. So a huge oversight in this bill, for example, is that it does not talk about student meals at all. Right now, student meals are handled by the Department of Agriculture. These programs are not mentioned in the bill, which could leave millions of kids in a really bad spot if states don't pick up the slack. And in the past, some states and districts have implemented policies that limit access to food for children who are legally mandated to be there. This is more prevalent in states where parents are forced to give birth to said children. Advocates for this are always crying declining test scores, but declining test scores comes from systemic issues like underfunding and teacher shortages, not the Department of Education itself. Abolishing this department will not solve these problems. I can't say it enough. The Education Department also ensures equitable access to education through programs like Title I and IDEA that support low-income and disabled students. But the problem is states could defund or decrease the funding of these programs. There will not be federal oversight saying, hey, you have to send this much to this school or whatever. Like, that won't be a thing. Redistributing programs to agencies like the Department of the Interior, the Department of Treasury, they lack educational expertise. This risks inefficiencies and mismanagement. Shifting oversight to the DOJ reduces focus on education-specific civil rights enforcement, leaving students who are marginalized vulnerable. Eliminating the Education Department risks creating inconsistent protections across states. Like I said, if this gets passed, the Department of Education would be shut down within 6 months, but reorganizing everything, all 17 departments, would take much, much longer. You're gonna have to move the programs to other departments, train staff, and figure out new rules, and this is gonna cause big delays, during which time funding for schools and students might get lost in the shuffle, especially for things like special education. We saw how vulnerable this system was during COVID, and it was funded. This bill has just been introduced. It's not moving right now. So think of this bill as an idea. Most bills never get that far, really. From like the 2021 to 2023, over 17,000 bills were introduced in Congress, but only 365 became laws. This bill does have a better chance than recent similar bills because Republicans control the Senate and the House and the presidency. However, they need 60 votes to pass this thing. So they need to convince at least a handful of Democrats or independents to vote in favor of it. A conservative Supreme Court also means that any legal fights over the bill might not succeed in stopping it. So what do we do? Okay, speak up, call or email your representatives in Congress, and keep your eyes on AFT and NEA. Follow the union's asks. Also, talk to friends and family, spread awareness about why this matters on social media, in person, spread the word, especially on issues like school meals and fairness in education and equity. We all want better schools, but this isn't the way to get there. Instead of tearing down the system, we need to fix what's broken and support kids and teachers and make sure that every student has a fair shot at success. Follow me for more. I'm still going to do my little skits and commentary and stuff, but I'll be yapping about all things education for the foreseeable future. Mwah.